You're listening to Side Hustle Pro, the podcast that teaches you to build and grow your side hustle from passion project to profitable business. And I'm your host, Nicaila Matthews-Okome. So let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is Nicaila here, and you're listening to the Side Hustle Pro podcast. And today I'm back with another student spotlight episode where I spotlight the amazing podcast creators and students inside of the Podcast Moguls accelerator program that I teach. So today in the guest chair, we have Erica McAfee, who is one of my OG Podcast Mogul students. She's been there since the creation of the program, and she's here to share her journey of growing her podcast, Sisters in Loss, through the lessons and strategies that I teach inside of Podcast Moguls. Erica is the founder and CEO of Sisters in Loss, a maternal child health hub that helps Black women replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Sisters in Loss provides pregnancy, birth, postpartum, bereavement, doula, and grief services to help women step beyond anxiety and fear and into trust and peace after loss. Its self-titled podcast spotlights resilient Black mothers who share intimate details of their journey into motherhood through painful but inspirational loss and infertility stories. Sisters in Loss has gone on to be featured in Forbes, BBC News, Black Enterprise, Women's Health, The Today Show, NBC Nightly News, and in the White House. And so today, Erica is going to share how she grew this podcast and how Podcast Moguls helped her to create a show that has been so impactful and also successful. So let's get right into it. Erica, welcome to the guest chair at last.
Yes, thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. So let everybody know what really inspired you to start podcasting.
Well, I had a long commute to work, and at the job at the time, it was about an hour or 2 hours both directions, round trip. So I listened to a whole bunch of other podcasts, from financial podcasts to pop culture podcasts. And I was like, I can do this at some point. Obviously, I had a story to tell of my own personal journey to motherhood. And that really is what influenced me to really put myself out there and really start the Sisters in Loss podcast.
So what was your initial career path? What were you commuting to?
I was commuting to and from a manufacturing facility. My background is in chemical engineering, so I've done and have been in engineering since graduating college as a shift supervisor and working in manufacturing. That is what I was doing at the time, going back and forth, and still what I currently do now. I like to call myself an entrepreneur, where I'm still working full time and still doing my side hustle.
We love it. We love it. So when did you actually start your podcast, and what was it called at the time?
So I started my podcast in August of 2017. And at the time it was named after me. And Nicaila was like, no. So it was originally the Erica and McAfee podcast. And I really started it with the intention of really trying to find my own journey to motherhood. Because at the time I was thinking about growing my family, and I really wanted to really interview other people who had done alternative methods of growing their family, like through gestational carriers or surrogacy or adopting. And the podcast was another way of me interviewing those people to find out information for myself personally, but obviously it evolved into something so much more.
And so at the time you were on a path to have an alternative method of childbirth. Is that
correct? Okay. That was the goal at the time. Obviously that has deteriored in the last, 4 or 5 years. But yeah, at the time that was the goal, was to grow my family in a different way.
So how did the goal shift? Like you keep alluding to it. What do you mean by that? How did it transform as you continue to do the podcast?
Well, at the time, so I ended up going through the process of starting to go to a fertility specialist and look about freezing my eggs, which I think everyone should do to preserve their fertility. And due to my traumatic birth, I was unable to do so. So I actually hit a roadblock where it was going to require like a major abdominal surgery, and I didn't want to be cut open again after going through a C-section. So I just decided that would end there as far as going down the path of gestational carriers, and then move towards possibly growing my family through adoption. Obviously, lots have changed over the last couple of years where I'm no longer partnered. So obviously that is not going to happen at this time. I'm content with my one, but my goal now is to help other women continue to grow their families in other ways.
You are just such an inspiration, and always being willing to share not only your journey, but then also having conversations that are sometimes difficult. And sometimes I'm sure triggering. Now, how do you navigate that?
Absolutely. Therapy. That is how I navigate through. And then also I only bulk record so that I have time to decompress. So maybe one Saturday or Sunday, I'm recording, 4 or 5 episodes, and then I won't record for the rest of the month, just so I can focus on what self-care looks like for me, pouring back into myself, really talking about it through my therapist, especially if some stories are triggering to me, which many of them are. This is a very traumatic storytelling experience. And I don't take it for granted that people come to share their stories and we create that safe space for Black women. But on the other side of it, it does take a toll on the storyteller, the person who's actually interviewing, because you're hearing this trauma after trauma. And, you have to have an outlet for it to go. So I normally will talk about it with my therapist. And obviously I have a circle of friends and family and other folks who are doing this work that I lean on if something is really bothering me, and I continue to carry it with me. But self-care is huge, whether it's releasing it through different modalities, like going to theater and musicals and live music. That's what I've been doing recently, to actually, really going out and hitting the pavement and exercising and doing movement therapy and just pouring back into yourself in all kinds of ways. So I try to do that. And I've learned to really tap into that over the last 2 years, where I'm not recording a whole lot at once, that I really bulk it in together and then take the next few weeks to kind of regroup and reset myself mentally to prepare for some more traumatic stories that may be told.
Well, I commend you for even being able to do that many at once, because I do like 2 and I'm like, whew,
that's a lot.
Exhausted. Because talking to someone, as an introvert, like that takes a lot out of you. I'm like, I need to just sit now with my own thoughts.
Absolutely.
I could only imagine. So let's talk a little bit about your journey in the Podcast Moguls program. Like, you were one of the earliest people to join Podcast Moguls. Like, we have really known each other for a while now. And it was so exciting when we met at the My Taught You retreat. So it's like, I feel like I know you, So what first attracted you to join Podcast Moguls?
Obviously, I love Side Hustle Pro. So I feel like, I also feel, obviously, being a podcaster and listening to podcasts, that's how you start. So you are almost a student of podcasting. And even though Side Hustle Pro obviously is in a different category than my podcast and Sisters in Loss, listening to your podcast and your interview style and how it really was inspirational to me, especially since I eventually want to turn my side hustle into something full time, really helped me understand exactly what it was. But then when you started to say, hold on, I'm leaving my job, I was like, hold on, not Michaela.
Where are you going?
Girl? You working full time? Okay, well, let me hop in. Because at that time, I think I was probably about 20 episodes into, the original title of my podcast, which was my name. And when you offered the program, I was like, of course, I believe in Michaela. I'm going to go and join her program. And I want to take Sisters in Loss to the next level. So why not? I think I was in that first cohort that you launched in 2018 and wanted to make sure that I was launching the right way, that I was marketing the right way, that I was targeting the right audience of people, and that I would continue to grow and change and evolve in how this podcasting medium has grown really over the last 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. And I remember just feeling like, after speaking to you, like, this is such an important conversation. And it's so important because so many people first, a lot of people don't know it happens, like that. It's so common. And then second, when it happens, that's when people start to care instead of educating themselves beforehand. But then when it does happen, you do want that support. So there's so many layers to it. And I just was like, I would be honored, to help to grow your show, because this is a conversation that more people need to hear. So once you joined, what were some of your biggest lessons from Podcast Moguls?
The biggest lesson was obviously, you want your brand name to stand out and really designate and determine exactly how people are going to find you. And obviously, No one knew who Erica was at the time. They may know
what it meant, what is this podcast about?
Exactly. So to have that definition or the definitive name and brand around the podcast was a huge lesson, because it really transformed how the show started to grow, the name of the show, how I wanted to brand the name. Search engine optimization was a big learning for me as well, to make sure that, anytime that I was actually naming episodes, that I was putting myself out there as that thought leader, that expert in how it was searched through Google, through YouTube. And I think that has helped people find me, because really, to be honest with you, no one probably knows that it exists until they need it. And then when they search it, guess who pops up first? Typically, it's I'm on that first page of Google because of maximizing search engine optimization and making sure those names are right. And then the last thing, I think the biggest takeaway from Podcast Moguls is that you have the opportunity to pivot and grow. Marketing is ever flowing. The algorithm changes every day.
Oh yes.
So, how really over this last 2 years, as TikTok world has taken off and Reels on Instagram, it's like there's so many ways to market your business, to market your podcast. Are you taking advantage of it? Are you really engaging with it and seeing what your target audience and your target listeners really looking for? And I think the other biggest takeaway about the marketing piece is that you're still a part of the program. So it's always jumping on those calls that you have monthly, being a part of the active Facebook group when new people come in and they're really engaged. And it's a continuing learning process. So even though I paid for this course, but it's paid for 4 or 5 times over.
Yeah.
This was in 2018, they were in 2022. It's paid for itself because of the ongoing support and access to you, Nikayla. I mean, how many times I've emailed you and be like, hey,
And that's what I like about it too. I always want people to feel like you can tap back in, because after you've gone through, your initial 8 weeks, you're not going to have a question every single day. But there are times when something new comes up, like, more sponsors are approaching me now. What do I do? Like I've gone through the lessons, but what is your take on this? And I'm very, very open to that, because I know that this is a new space that we're all still navigating together, especially as podcasters of color or Black podcasters. And we need to stick together and we need to share. Absolutely. So I love that you touched on the marketing, because that is a huge piece of podcasting. So a lot of people get into it and they're thinking about the mic. How am I going to edit? What am I going to name my show? Who's going to design the logo? How important do you think that stuff is compared to the marketing?
Honest with you, it's not important at all if you don't have anyone listening. It's not important at all. I think you want to build your audience the right way. You want to know exactly who your audience is, what they like, what are they currently listening to? What are they watching? Are they following certain people on TikTok? You need to know that information, because those are the folks you need to go find out there. And then you can, once you build your audience up and you get a little coin, then go get your branding done. Get your branding done right. Get your website done right. Then reinvest in yourself. But no, it's not important at all in the beginning. You all really need to find out who you're marketing to, who your target audience, who your target listener is. And that's the person you need to continually market to, especially as they grow and evolve. And in my case, for my listener, obviously I have people who come to the podcast because they're looking for that outlet, that healing, that hope. But I also have people who are on the other side of motherhood too, and they may already be mothers, but they're also still grieving, and they still need that extra support and things that are there. So my target audience is very, very vast, but they still like the same things. We like our ratchet TV, right. We love watching TikToks on cleaning and organizing, even though we may not do it,
We like to see it.
We like to see it though, right? So I know exactly who my target audience is. I know her name. I know exactly what she wants. So I know how to market towards her and get things in front of her so that she can react to them, So I try to do that. And then obviously, I aggressively stalk people too. So
yes. But it's so true because, listen, when I tell people that, you need to know who your listener is, they either get really overwhelmed or sometimes defensive because they're like, I want to talk to this person and this person. And I'm not saying that you won't have a variety of listeners, but you have a core central ideal listener that you need to tap into. Everybody else is byproduct listeners, and that's okay. And that's wonderful that they love your show. But if you're not appealing to this person by, how you write about your show in the show notes, how you title your show, then you're not going to grow that audience because you need more and more people like this person to see your show. So Erica does that really, really well. And, I'm glad we were able to work through that rebrand from Erica McAfee to Sisters-in-Laws. And it's okay to go through a rebrand with your podcast. I went through a rebrand. There's levels to it. So don't be intimidated by that. So guys, I know investing and trading can seem really intimidating and complicated, but it doesn't have to be that way. Episode 301 guest Terry Ajoma runs one of the top investing education programs out there. It's called Trade and Travel. It's an on-demand course with really thorough lessons that explain everything. And it also features weekly coaching with Terry herself and a very active private Facebook community. How do I know? Because I am also a Trade and Travel student, and Trade and Travel is helping me to break through the intimidation that I've always felt around stocks. So Terry teaches you the difference between long versus short selling. She teaches you everything you need to know about getting set up, where to invest, how to invest. She teaches you how to trade stocks as a side hustle to earn extra income, and how to set concrete goals, realistic goals, how to pace yourself. Trading is not something you need to do every day. Terry really shows you how to do it in a realistic side hustle way so that you're trading, but you're also, having impact and making wise choices. So go ahead and learn more and sign up for the Trade and Travel program at sidehustlepro.co/trade and travel. And I'll link to it in the show notes. Through Trade and Travel, you can learn how to trade as a side hustle and supplement your income with trading. So sign up for Trade and Travel at sidehustlepro.co/trade and travel. One more time, that's sidehustlepro.co/trade and travel. So, who were some of the first sponsors that you worked with, and how did the opportunity come about? Did you pitch them or did they reach out to you?
I pitched my first sponsors using templates that you provided in Podcast Moguls, and particularly was just targeting brands that I knew my target listener and audience would really benefit from. So a lot of fertility companies, a lot of baby product companies that I would pitch to. A lot of them were like, oh no, at the time, this was back in 2018. And then other ones were like, of course. So those were the first individuals that I've pitched to. But since then, I haven't had to pitch anything. A lot of the companies have been coming to me, which is a blessing.
Yes.
And I get to be selective on, is this a product or service that I want evergreen in my podcast that I can offer, this code or discount or whatever to my audience. And it's a blessing to be in that position to offer that. So I just had a call the other day with 2 apps that want to advertise on the podcast, but it's like the same thing. Is this going to be beneficial to my audience? Is your messaging right around Black maternal health and social justice and reproductive justice? Yeah. And if it is, then that is a great partnership. But if it's not, and you all are, just want to get in front of this particular group of Black women, then it's not for me, because I want to make sure that we're aligned on the same thing. And I want to make sure that my audience is getting products through sponsorship that are going to be beneficial to them, but it's really going to help them on their journey to becoming mothers. So that has been the transition from prior sponsors to the current sponsorship roll up that I have now.
It's so important. And I'm glad you touched on that, because not all money, is good money. You will lose listeners if you have partnerships that just don't make sense, that are not aligned with who they are and what they value and, what they need. You need to really understand that about sponsorships and getting sponsors for your show. Now, how do you balance your full-time job with the podcast?
Cool, child. That's good. I think I've done better at this in the last 2 years. Before, I felt like I was going crazy, doing the most, scheduling things here, using an admin to do certain things. And then these last 2 years, it just kind of all gelled and meshed, where I do have a podcast editor that I work with and have been working with probably the last 3 years. So between my podcast editor, the admin, and the YouTube editor, because we got that now. We're on YouTube now.
Yes. I love it.
We have a system in place that has helped manage and make time better. So, having a Trello board set up on when things are due, how in advance we're going to post things, and just making sure we're just working the system. But it takes time to get there. I mean, a lot of it you're going to manually do for a bit yourself until you get the system and you get the people in place that can help you navigate it. Having an editor helped alleviate a lot of time. So paying for that editor in the beginning, 3 years ago when I hired her, was worth every penny. And it's still worth every penny, because that takes away time of me sitting down and editing. So when I knew I wanted to go YouTube route, it was the same thing. It was a more time thing on my part to be able to have that extra time to do all the other things I need to do. But taking time during lunch at work is something that I've learned from you and other side hustlers on Side Hustle Pro.
Yes.
So using my lunch break to my advantage and maximizing my time there. And then I use the weekend. Sundays are my days to not only reset for the week for work, but also to kind of do a bulk of my things planning for the week for the podcast. So, getting things uploaded, I typically have pretty much all of my podcasts, editing, emails, prepped, all that's done on Sunday prior to it actually getting published on Wednesdays, normally when I publish my podcast episode. So I try to do a lot of that bulk on the weekends. And it's now, obviously it's easy because I got the system in place. But before it was just a hustle. You had to take the time out, those extra hours after work to make it happen. Now it's a little bit easier just because I have a team around me to help out, but it's still work, right? It's a consistency muscle that you have to build. Some of those days you don't want to actually press publish on a podcast episode. Right. You still got to do it because that listener is looking for that episode. That listener is looking for that inspiration, that healing. And you want them to hear, those people that you've talked to and you're telling their story. So I try to balance it out as best I can. I think I'm better at it now than I was in the beginning. In the beginning, it was very chaotic. I had to get a rhythm in place on exactly how I was going to do it, what I was doing, and really understanding my why. I think that's the biggest part of all the consistency is why are you consistently publishing an episode weekly or bi-weekly or within a season. How is this going to benefit those who are listening when you put it out there? And at the end of the day, it's still work. So
it is still work. It's another job. Like the side hustle is another job.
It's another
job. You do have to know that why. And that goes back to why, as part of Podcast Moguls, like everyone has to identify what I call their perfect listener, because that's part of your why. You have to remember, like, they need this and they're looking for this. And this is not about you anymore. You don't start your show just to talk about yourself, because like you could just do that on your phone and, save a little voice note. But if you're making a show, it should be about who you're called to serve, entertain, teach, what have you. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that does keep you pushing, because not every week is perfect. Even when you have a system, sometimes you don't feel like doing the system.
You still don't.
You just want to just veg. You just want to like relax, and no one is holding you accountable but yourself, right? Like there's no boss, there's nothing like that but you. And so you have to like push through your procrastination or, all of that to keep it going.
The other thing that I also do to balance between full-time work and this side hustle is really looking at my email and evaluating, is this going to take a 5-minute response, or is this like me sitting down and taking, 30 minutes to an hour? 9 times out of 10, if an email comes in and I can quickly respond, I typically will do that. And then I set those hours that I'm going to sit down once a week or twice a week to respond to those longer emails that may need some additional information, or a lot of things people may need from you are quick things that you can probably put in your notes and then just copy paste and get it to them. But other things do require some more detail, especially if you're corresponding with the sponsor or someone who wants you to do some other type of information. So I try to take out separate times throughout the week to do that. So Sunday's my bulk day, is when I do a lot of my bulk material. Obviously, the podcast goes live on Wednesday. So then I'm also tracking it Thursday, Friday, Saturday to see how the numbers are doing. Also looking to see if, views on YouTube, if people actually tagging it and looking at it. And then what other things are we doing to continue to market the podcast? So that's a continued thing throughout the week after work to look at, to see how are we doing with numbers, and how are we making sure we continue to put the information out there and these stories are being told in different places.
And what I love about your show too is oftentimes people think of podcasts as like one or two kind of topics. Like you can have a co-host and y'all just talk about nothing and joke all day like that. These are the podcasts that people tend to see a lot these days. And they think, oh, I need a co-host, or, oh, it has to be funny, or it has to be this. And you are a perfect example of the fact that your show can be about any topic. Like as long as you've done the work to understand if this is something that people need, are they talking about it? What are they not talking about when it comes to this topic? So like, what gap would I be filling in with my show? Did you ever doubt if your topic could be a podcast?
I did in the beginning.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Okay. And why was that?
Because at the beginning, so when I started this podcast in August, this was August of 2017, no one was talking about this in the Black community. On a podcast. I mean, obviously they probably were articles and, blogs and things of that nature.
Magazines.
But like consistently talking about it on a weekly basis. I was pulling people, like I was I was searching for people who would be willing to share. A lot of Black women still don't share. We keep these stories close to our chests. It's something culturally that we do. So I was reaching out to a lot of nonprofit organization owners, a lot of folks who were already blogging and talking about these topics. And those are the people that were willing to come and share. But it wasn't until November of 2018 when Michelle Obama's book came out. And Michelle, our forever First Lady, shared her story about experiencing miscarriage and going through IVF, in vitro fertilization, fertility treatments to have her 2 children. That is when people were like, aha, so from then really into now, my podcast has been completely booked.
Wow.
Booked out. Like I don't have weeks. And I was just thinking about this the other day when I was talking to one of my podcast editors that, I really haven't repeated podcast episodes.
Wow.
And the reason why is because there's so many people that want to share their story now. And it's something I'm doing this summer. Girl, I'm taking a break. we're doing rewinds.
Break. Do those rewinds.
We need to do the rewind. So we're doing that this summer. But still, I mean, because obviously I haven't really had a chance to do it because it's been really booked since then. A lot of people want to share. So yes, I was very scared in the beginning because it was pulling teeth to get people.
Yeah.
And then our forever first lady opened the door, and people, we love her. So people were like, if she's willing to share this in her book, this is a platform now. Let me go. And it's particularly dedicated for Black women and women of color. Let me go up here and allow Erica to share my story, because she created this safe space for me to do so. And it's been the biggest blessing, because I get to share so many different styles of stories. They're not always successes, right? We don't always get to that.
Not always a happy ending.
It's not always a happy ending, but that story still needs to be told. So I'm honored that people still come and still want to share.
And have you reached out to Michelle? I mean, she definitely needs to be in the guest chair.
She sure does. Those are like my top guests.
Okay,
Michelle,
listen, I know some of y'all listening are 1 degree from Michelle or might have worked with Michelle. I know some of y'all are powerful listening to this show. I know some of y'all worked in the office. I've added Kamala to my list, because Kamala has a story. She has some stories. She has to let us know.
She has a story as well. So she's added to the list of top guests that I would love to have on the podcast.
And they will be on the show, because listen, what you are building is a platform. Can we talk about this? The platform that podcasting gives us, the opportunities and doors it opens up for us. Did you ever think that your podcast would open the kind of doors that it has opened? I mean, you've been featured in magazines, newspapers, on stages. Like, how did that come about, through the podcast?
Oh, it's a blessing. People saying your names in rooms that you have yet to occupy. Right. I mean, that's really what has happened for me. And I'm always blown away that people know who I am or know about the platform. And I'm just like, how did you find out about us? But yeah, it's really people saying my name, saying, oh, no, you need to go listen to Sisters-in-Law, or you need to go contact Erica. She is the go-to person to talk about this, or to be able to share her thoughts on this. Obviously, we just came out of this ruling for Roe versus Wade. And I did not realize how many people wanted to talk to me about this topic. I mean, I had... I was like, because I posted a little bit, obviously I posted about it, but I got inundated with a bunch of journalists and reporters and people just wanting to share, my thoughts on it. And that just really showed me, oh my gosh, really, this has been impactful, even in this space, when we're talking about reproductive rights and reproductive justice, and having loss and infertility be a part of that conversation is so important and so critical. But yeah, I would have never known that, this platform I started 5 years ago with just the hope of growing my family would turn into all the news features and, going to the White House and doing all these other things. It has consistently blown my mind. And I'm just so honored and so humbled.
And do you pitch yourself, you've developed a media kit, I'm sure. So do you pitch yourself? Are there certain months devoted to your podcast topic that you kind of pitch yourself to be a speaker or a commentator about?
Absolutely. So this is pitch season for me. October is a huge month for the loss and infertility community. So I normally start pitching now for opportunities in October during Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month to get in front of people. So not only on media, which I've been doing a lot more, obviously, actual news media, but also, articles and magazines and journalists just say, hey, if this is something that you want to talk about or feature for October, I'm your girl.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm your girl. So yes, I do still pitch myself, but I also, a lot of things just come naturally. My Sisters-in-Law was featured with BBC News in London. I would have never would have thought
to pitch them, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, the people over in London, you know me, right? I mean, we had a full 2-hour conversation with them. They did multiple segments on us, and then they even did a 30-minute segment on just Sisters-in-Law. And I don't think that, I would have never thought that would have focused on just pregnancy loss with Black women in the United States, and that would come from such a large organization like that. And I didn't even pitch that. That was someone who reached out to me, saw me, and was just like, hey, I think that your organization would be a good fit for this story. And it turned out, it was supposed to be something very small, and it turned out into this large big, huge piece on exactly what loss and infertility is in the United States. So yeah, I don't normally pitch myself, but when you do good work, God blesses it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I'm just so proud of you. I'm so amazed. Like, that's well-deserved, incredible. I mean, you do like consistent, devoted work to this practice, because this is your practice. This is your mission to this world and this earth. And I'm just so, so glad that the portfolio you've built, because that's what podcasting is, you guys. Like, you are creating a portfolio on this earth, this catalog of what you can be called on to speak about. So when people Google, first of all, the topic, because we make sure that you have a Googleable topic in Podcast Moguls, but then also your name, the subject matter, we're making sure that you're including that in your summaries of your episode, really robust things so that you are taking advantage of search engine optimization. So when the BBC London does a search on pregnancy and infancy loss, and, they start Googling about statistics and all of that, what's popping up? Your show over and over again. They're like, we need to tap into this. This woman is doing this work. Like, she's had all the conversations that we're here searching, trying to have on the show, on this segment. So I really believe everyone needs to start a podcast. Well, maybe not everyone. All right. Serious people who are trying to build a platform and, build a brand that can have such a large impact. More and more people need to look into podcasting. I really believe it.
I do. Your voice is needed, y'all. Your voice is needed.
Your voice is needed. So before we transition into the lightning round, I would love to know, how are you continuing to approach the money aspect of podcasting, right? You talked about hopefully one day being able to scale to make it your full hustle. So what is your strategy moving forward to do so?
So a part of what I've done over the last 2 years is pivot. So I've done a lot more education and training. I've done a lot of training of doulas and birth workers, and really talking about bereavement care as a whole and what that looks like. So actually, over these last 2 years, I've actually made more than my normal job salary in my side hustle.
I love that. Love to hear it. But you keep the two and you stack.
Exactly.
You stack that money. Yes.
Exactly. So I'm going to continue to do that, continue to, build up this training and education platform of Sisters in Loss. I've partnered with other large organizations. We did a partnership this year with Postpartum Support International to offer maternal mental health, like grief support groups. So a lot of partnerships are coming through that'll help continue to build. Some grants have come through as well. Yes. So there are opportunities to grow and continue to pour into, to make that next step, that leap. That leap is coming.
The leap is coming.
The leap is coming. But those are the main things that I really are pouring my energy into, is really making sure that we're educating people, and then that they're going out and helping and serving more people as well. So that is always the goal, is to make sure that we are continuing to help serve and fight for and save Black moms and babies.
Amen.
Point blank, period.
Point blank, period. Okay, so now we're going to transition into the lightning round. You know the deal. I know you know the deal. You just answer the very first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. So what has been a resource that has helped you in your side hustle that you can share with the Side Hustle Pro audience?
Side Hustle Pro podcast and Brown Ambition podcast. I love Tiffany Aliche.
I love them.
They're like my sisters in my head. So, or my cousins. We're going to call them cousins. Yeah. So those two podcasts, obviously you're listening to this one, go listen to Brown Ambition and you'll get exactly the same thing over there too, from a financial perspective.
Number 2, who is a Black woman side hustler or entrepreneur who you would want to switch places with for a day, and why?
Oh man, this is hard. We just gonna go. We're gonna go with the one that I always look at. It's like my mentor in my head, my leak.
Yes.
Leak from Curlbox. I mean, who doesn't follow my leak? And if you're not following her, you need to. I'm a part of her mommy group too, and it's just, everything that I didn't know I needed. And you all definitely need to tap into my leak and all that she's offering to the world. So,
yes,
for sure.
Yes. Number 3, what is a non-negotiable part of your daily routine?
Coffee in the morning, prayer, and taking the time out to turn the TV off before I go to sleep at night. So I do a data dump at night that helps with me with my self-care. And sometimes your mind is racing and sometimes you just need to get it all out. So turning the TV off, data dumping, and then obviously get up in the morning praying, and then coffee. Coffee is necessary. Coffee's life.
Yes. Okay. Number 4, what's a personal habit that you think has really contributed to making your side hustle as successful as it's been?
Knowing my why and why I'm doing what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, it's still work. And if I did not know why and who I was doing this for, I would not post this consistently. I wouldn't market. I wouldn't send those emails out. The podcast wouldn't be up consistently every week to week. So knowing my why is the reason why I continue to side hustle, and, eventually it'll be full time.
Yes. And I'm so glad you reminded us of that, because that is it. That is the core central motivator. All right. Number 5, lightning round. That's not so lightning, but number 5. What is your parting advice for everyone listening who, have an idea but are scared to get started?
I would just say, just do it. Just start. You never know where it's going to go and where it may end up. And if you have to pivot, you still can pivot back. But you really need to just start. The idea that you have, the dream that you have, that goal that you have, just do it. Put one foot in front of the other. Do not let anybody stop you. Don't let the people be in your ears, and just do it. That's the only way that you're going to get some success. And we have to fail, right? There are always going to be failures. There's always going to be lessons learned in the failing too, but you have to do it. You have to start. I always go back to a Bible verse, faith without works is dead. And it's not, it is. You have to take and actually do the work and actually step out on faith. So the work has to be done in order for God to bless it.
Amen. Amen. And with that, Erica, so where can people connect with you and Sisters in Loss after this episode?
Absolutely. Well, we're everywhere at Sisters in Loss. That's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Girl, we on TikTok too. And personally, I'm the same everywhere too at Erica McAfee. You can find me mostly on Instagram, but I'm also everywhere at Erica McAfee.
All right, you guys. So there you have it. This has been a phenomenal episode with Erica. I'm so glad that, you guys are getting to hear more student spotlights from my Podcast Mogul students. And by the way, if you want to learn more about Podcast Moguls, head over to podcastmoguls.com/join. I will link to it in the show notes. And with that, I will talk to you next week. Hey guys, thanks for listening to Side Hustle Pro. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other side hustlers just like you to find the show. And if you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Side Hustle Pro. Plus, sign up for my 6-bullet Saturday newsletter at sidehustlepro.co/newsletter. When you sign up, you'll receive weekly nuggets from me, including what I'm up to, personal lessons, and my business tip of the week. Again, that's sidehustlepro.co/newsletter to sign up. Talk to you soon.